Hello dear students, welcome for the lecture series on tourism. In this episode, we are concentrating on implementation of tourism development. The topic is divided into the following headings. They are organizational effects, tourism development effort, tourism policy, impacts of development, development of tourism in India. Let us start with the first one, organizational effects. A tourism development effort is related to a total organization change such as a change in the culture or the reward systems or the total managerial strategy. There may be tactical efforts which work with sub-parts of the organization, but the system to be changed in a total, relatively autonomous organization. This is not necessarily a total corporation or an entire government, but refers to a system which is relatively free to determine its own plans and future within very general constraints from the environment. Characteristics. Most successful tourism development efforts have the following characteristics. First one, planned. There is a planned program involving the whole system. Second one, aware of and committed to program. The top of the organization is aware of and committed to the program and to the management of it. This does not necessarily mean that they participate exactly the same way as other levels of the organization do, but that they accept the responsibility for the management. Organization's mission. It is related to the organization's mission. The organization development effort is not a program to improve effectiveness in the abstract. Rather, it is an effort to improve effectiveness aimed specifically at creating organization conditions that will improve the organization's ability to achieve its mission goals. Long term. It is a long term effect. It is one of the major problems in organization development efforts because most reward systems are based on rewarding the achievement of short term profit objectives. Most organization leaders are impatient with improvement efforts which take extended time. Yet, if real change is to occur and to be maintained, there must be a commitment to an extended time and a willingness to reward for the process of movement towards the goal, as well as towards the specific achievement of short term goals. Fifth one, action oriented. Activities are action oriented. The types of interventions and activities in which organization members participate are aimed at changing something after the activity. In this respect, tourism development activities are different from many other training efforts where the activity itself, such as a training course or a management workshop, is designed to produce increased knowledge, skill or understanding which the individual is then supposed to transfer to the operating situation. In tourism development efforts, the group builds in connections and follow up activities that are aimed toward action programs. Changing attitudes and or behavior. It focuses on changing attitudes and or behavior. Although processes, procedures, way of work, etc. do undergo change in organization development programs, the major target of change is the attitude, behavior and performance of people in the organization. Experience-based learning activities. It usually relies on some form of experience-based learning activities. The reason for this is that if a goal is to change attitude and or behavior, a particular type of learning situation is required for such change to occur. It is necessary to examine present behavior, experiment with alternatives and begin to practice modified ways if change is to occur. Primarily with groups. Tourism development efforts work primarily with groups. An underlying assumption is that groups and teams are the basic units of organization to be changed or modified as one moves towards organization health and effectiveness. Individual learning and personal change do occur in tourism development programs, but as a full out these are not the primary goals or intentions. Moving on to the next one, tourism development effort. An essential condition of any effective change program is that somebody in a strategic position really feels the need for change. Few kinds of conditions or felt needs that have supplied the impetus for tourism development efforts are shown below. Need to change a managerial strategy. It is a fact that many managers of small and large enterprises are today re-examining the basic strategies by which the organization is operating. They are attempting to modify their total managerial strategy, including the communications patterns, location of decision making, the reward system, etc. Need to make organization climate more consistent. The need to make the organization climate more consistent with both individual needs and the changing needs of the environment. If a top manager or strategically placed staff person or enough people in the middle of the hierarchy really feel this need, the organization is in a ready state for some planned change effort to meet it. Need to change cultural norms. More and more managers are learning that they are really managing a culture with its own values, ground rules, norms and power structure. If there is a felt need that the culture needs to be changed in order to be more consistent with competitive demands or the environment, this is another condition where an organization development program is appropriate. All positions above the upper middle of the structure were restricted to members of the family. All stock was owned by the family and all policy decisions were made by a family board. Some of the more progressive members of the family became concerned about the state of the enterprise in these changing times. They strongly felt the need for changing from a family-owned, family-controlled organization to a professionally managed organization. Need to change structure and roles. An awareness by key management that we are just not properly organized, that the work of the research department and the work of the development department should be separated or should be integrated, that the management services function and the personnel function should report to the field managers, should take over some of the activities of the headquarters staff, etc. Need to improve inter-group collaboration. One of the major expenditure of dysfunctional energy in organizations is the large amount of inappropriate competition between groups. When this becomes noticeable and top managers are hurting, they are ready to initiate efforts to develop a program for increasing inter-group collaboration. Need to open up communication system. When managers become aware of significant gaps in communication up or down or of a lack of adequate information for making decisions, they may feel the need for action to improve the situation. Need for better planning. One of the major corollaries of the increasing complexity of business and the changing demands of the environment is that the planning function, which used to be highly centralized in the president's or national director's office, now must be done by a number of people throughout the organization. Most people who are in roles requiring this skill have little formal training in it. Therefore, their planning practices are frequently crude, unsophisticated and not too effective. Moving on to the next one, tourism policy. Recognizing its importance as an instrument of economic development, a comprehensive tourism policy highlighting the objectives of tourism and development in the country was promulgated by the government during 1982. The policy envisaged the conversion of the many attractions of India for tourism into a reality through well-planned, well-defined and fully integrated national programs. It specified the responsibility for tourism development as a common endeavour of all the agencies vitally concerned with tourism at central and state levels, including public and private sector enterprises, airlines, railways and road transport systems, municipal and local bodies as well as cultural and educational institutions. Further, it provided an action plan based on a travel circuit concept to maximize the benefits of tourism. The plan proposed achieved intensive development of selected circuits, dispel the tendency of concentration in a few urban centers, encourage the diversification of tourist areas which hold many tourist attractions. Manpower development and training were also given due weightage to ensure efficient services and effective management of tourist facilities. Tourism was recognized as an industry by 1986 and became eligible for several incentives and facilities including tax incentives, subsidies, priorities in the sanctioning of loans by the state financial institutions and preference for providing electricity and water connections. Many other incentives came based on the report submitted by the National Committee on Tourism in 1988. It was one of the most comprehensive reports on tourism development in India. The report carried forward the underlying thread of 1982 tourism policy, that is, the need for a national consensus on role and tourism development in the country. National Tourism Policy 2014. The highlights of the draft National Tourism Policy according to the year 2014 is emphasis on board areas such as welcome, information, cooperation and infrastructure development. It identifies domestic tourism, inbound tourism and outbound tourism and seek to provide adequate focus on domestic tourism along with inbound tourism. The policy emphasizes the poverty elevation and employment generation aspects of tourism. The preservation and protection of our national resources, environment and ecology is included as one of the objectives of tourism development. The policy recognizes that tourism should become a major avenue for the people of India and other countries to see, feel, admire its magnificent attractions and achievements. The policy recognizes the information gap in understanding the economic and social significance of tourism and creation of awareness about benefits of tourism. A comprehensive definition of tourism product is now included in the policy. The policy recognizes the roles of central and state governments, public sector undertakings and private sector in the development of tourism are clearly differentiated. The involvement of Panchayat Raj institutions, local bodies, non-governmental organizations and the local youth in the creation of tourist facilities for domestic tourists is recognized in the policy, that is, community participation in tourism development. Diversification of the tourism product to supplement the mainstream of cultural tourism is recognized. Sustainable development of tourism within the carrying capacity of the area is advocated. Need for improving facilitation services is recognized, which included upgradation of airports, air services to remote areas with small aircrafts, railway links to major tourist centers, special tourist trains, road transport facilities and improvement of amenities like internal roads, electricity, water supply, etc. in tourism destinations. The need for a package of physical and financial incentives for the establishment of new enterprises and their wider spread is realized. Coming to impacts of development. Tourism industry in India has several positive and negative impacts on the economy and society. These impacts are highlighted below. First one, positive impacts. In that we have generating income and employment. Tourism in India has emerged as an instrument of income and employment generation, poverty elevation and sustainable human development. It contributes 6.77% to the national GDP and 8.78% of the total employment in India. Almost 20 million people are now working in the India's tourism industry. Source of foreign exchange earnings. Tourism is an important source of foreign exchange earnings in India. This has favorable impact on the balance of payment of the country. The tourism industry in India generated about $100 billion in 2008 and that is expected to increase to $275.5 billion by 2018 at a 9.4% annual growth rate. Preservation of national heritage and environment. Tourism helps to preserve several places which are of historical importance by declaring them as heritage sites. Developing infrastructure. Tourism tends to encourage the development of multiple use of infrastructure that benefits the host community, including various means of transports, healthcare facilities and sports centers. Promoting peace and stability. Tourism industry can also help to promote peace and stability in developing country like India by providing jobs, generating income and diversifying the economy. The multiplier effect. The flow of money generated by tourist spending multiplies as it passes through various sections of the economy. Regional development. The underdeveloped regions of the country can greatly benefit from tourism development. Many of the economically backward regions contain areas of high scenic beauty and cultural attractions. Economic value of cultural resources. Tourism provides monetary incentives for the development of many local crafts and culture, thus it has an effect on the income of the local artisans and artists. Promotion of international understanding. Tourism can also become an effective tool to develop a better understanding and interaction among people of different countries. Negative impacts. First one, undesirable social and cultural change. Tourism sometimes led to the destruction of the social fabric of a community. The more tourists coming into a place, the more the perceived risk of that place losing its identity. Increased tension and hostility. Tourism can increase tension, hostility and suspension between the tourist and the local communities when there is no respect and understanding for each other's culture and way of life. Creating a sense of antipathy. Tourism brought little benefit to local community. In most all-inclusive package tours, more than 80% of travelers' fees go to airlines, hotels and other international companies, not to local businessmen and workers. Adverse effects on environment and ecology. One of the most important adverse effects of tourism on the environment is increased pressure on the carrying capacity of the ecosystem in each tourist locality. Import leakage. This commonly occurs when tourists demand standards of equipment, food, drinks and other products that the host country cannot supply, especially developing countries. Seasonal character of job. The job opportunities related to tourism industry are seasonal in nature, as they are available only during the tourist season. Increase in prices. Increasing demand for basic services and goods from tourists will often cause price hikes that negatively affect local residents whose income does not increase proportionately. Moving on to the last one, development of tourism in India. Early development. The first conscious and organized efforts to promote tourism in India were made in 1945 when a committee was set up by the government under the chairmanship of Sir John Sargent, the then educational advisor to the government of India. Thereafter, the development of tourism was taken up in a planned manner in 1956, coinciding with the second 5-year plan. But it was only after the 80s that tourism activity gained momentum. The government took several significant steps. A national policy on tourism was announced in 1982. Later, in 1988, the National Committee on Tourism formulated a comprehensive plan for achieving a sustainable growth in tourism. In 1992, a National Action Plan was prepared, and in 1996, the National Strategy for Promotion of Tourism was drafted. In 1997, the new tourism policy recognizes the roles of central and state governments, public sector undertakings and the private sector in the development of tourism. Present situation and features of tourism in India. Today, tourism is the largest service industry in India with a contribution of 6.77% to the national GDP and providing 8.78% of the total employment. India witnesses more than 5 million annual foreign tourist arrivals and 562 million domestic tourism visits. The tourism industry in India generated about $100 billion in 2008, and that is expected to increase to $275.5 billion by 2018 at a 9.4% annual growth rate. Moreover, India has been ranked the best country brand for value for money. India made it to the list of rising stars, or the countries that are likely to become major tourist destinations in the next 5 years, led by the United Arab Emirates, China and Vietnam. The demand for travel and tourism in India is expected to grow by 8.2% between 2010 and 2019 and will place India at the 3rd position in the world. Future trends in tourism development. India must look to the future to be ready to receive future visitors with the services and products that they will demand. Tourism stakeholders, public and private sector, need to ensure that tourism policies and planning, product development and marketing strategies are consistent with the trends and environmental factors that are shaping the behavior of future tourists. Economic trends. Political pressures for higher living standards as democracy spreads globally. Improved macroeconomic policies. Continued deregulation or liberalization of international travel. Rising trade and investment. diffusion of information technology, increasingly dynamic private sectors. Social trends. Increasing expectations will generate more demand for flexible expenditure on travel and tourism. Growing urban congestion will increase need to escape and or indulge. Aging populations. Individuals seeking authentic tourism experiences. Growth will occur in holidays for the retired and for single people. Political trends. Issues and fallout from heightened security and terror will continue. Increased security costs for international commerce. Threat of terrorism will be more decentralized due to internet. Real and perceived risk constrain tourist behavior. Environmental trends. Rising population and economic development are affecting the availability of natural resources, food production, water and energy. Fossil fuel based energy sources will become more expensive. The new carbon economy is set to increase the demand for energy efficiency and investment in renewable forms of energy. Students, after going through the above discussed material, I hope you are able to understand organizational effects, tourism development efforts and tourism policy. Thank you.